Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. With every single passing day, India's hegemonic designs are becoming evident, and its relations with almost all of its neighbors happen to be tense and strained. Despite that, it continues to spend more and more to build up its military strength. Now, its finance minister has put forth the defense spending budget for the financial year of 2023 and 24 at around $72.6 billion, which is a 13% increase from the previous period's initial estimates also. And now this particular defense spending budget surpasses that of the UK as well as Russia, making India the third largest defense spenders in the world. At the same time, India has also unveiled the largest helicopter factory in the Karnataka state in a push for the defense self-reliance. Now, what security implications lie ahead because of this huge defense spending by India for the region, especially when we talk about China and Pakistan? At the same time, Western powers, including the US and France, are also supporting India to build up its military strength, and they have also signed certain agreements with India. Now, since we know that the US aims to contain China in the region, for that purpose, it has made India its strategic partner. So do the Western countries, including the US, realize that with such a support to India, the balance of power in the region is going to be disturbed seriously? We'll try to look into the answers of these questions, and we are honored to have been joined on Skype by Dr. Asma Shakir Khawaja. She is Executive Director, Center for International Strategic Studies. Dr. Asma, thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Now, when we talk about this particular defense spending budget, there is a 13% increase from the previous period's initial estimates. Why do you think it is so? Is India trying to achieve security or that power to intimidate and bully and become a hegemon in the region for its particular neighbors, including Pakistan and China?
Thank you so much for asking such a pertinent question. When we see India's defense policies, defense postures, and defense spendings, it is definitely not not to ensure their own security, but to fulfill their hegemonic designs and their strategic ambitions across the globe. So definitely this increase in budget will it manifests India's intentions or policies to intimidate immediate neighbors like China, like Pakistan, and other smaller countries of South Asia and across the region as well, because India's missile posturing that is not confined to a specific region, but now India has access to reach out to those areas which definitely are not part of South Asia. So this is really alarming that when international security or international economy is suffering from inflation and all those problems. But to me, as a student of security studies, it occurs that India is trying to diversify its military dependence, and that is again to achieve that is again a policy that India's hegemonic design should not be compromised if there is any change in regional security paradigm. For example, Indian military modernization, India was almost completely depending upon Russian defense industry, and they had several agreements related to defense procurement and cooperation with Russia. But since Russia is busy in Ukraine and Russia's military priorities, defense priorities, or regional priorities are not the same, I would say, as earlier. Therefore, India's military modernization process may get slow, and all those efforts like inaugurating the factories, new MICs, military industrial complexes, are part of India's new strategy of indigenous reliance for military preparedness and military development. when we see and to me it looks that as if India wants to enter in the competition of military industrial complexes in order to feel like a big power or an influential power, and make smaller countries dependent upon on India for their military modernization, procurement, defense procurements, and all other things. But again, at the same time, it is really important to understand that whatever it is, this recently, few days back, I think I was reading an article by Mr. Daniel Murky, who wrote No Exit from Pakistan, the famous book. He was like he wrote clearly that although escalation may be a difficult thing in South Asia, strategic escalation, but it is not when one cannot rule out the possibility of nuclear escalation. And and when the scenario is that volatile, then definitely India's military ambitions and defense policies, they are not exclusively dealing with India's strategic ambition, but affecting the secure sense of security or impacting the security dilemma, intense security dilemma already existing in this South Asia region. And definitely it is going to affect the balance of power. It is going to raise certain red flags for the other regional powers and all other regional countries who feel offended by India's aggressive defense posturing. They have to redesign or reformulate their defense policies in order to curtail Indian influence and hegemonic regional and I would say extra regional designs as well. So but definitely if we see, it is a defense budget presented to the Indian parliament right like well before the elections. So all these activities or these pledges or initiatives in terms of aggressive defense posturing, indigenous reliance, military modernization, constructing, building their own helicopters, their own aircrafts. If you see that they have in this budget, the $3 billion have been allocated for the naval fleet construction, and then $7 billion are allocated for the air force procurement. So all these things are related to the domestic politics of India, that so that in spite of the economic stress on Indian economy and the increased number of poverty, people living below the poverty line in India, and all the criticism on Mr. Modi, especially after the downfall of Mr. Adani, and all that nexus which has been emerged on international media between the black market, black money, Modi regime, BJP, domestic agendas. So all these aggressive defense posturing would be used by Mr. Modi or BJP under Mr. Modi to show or to influence people and the Hindutva vote bank or Indian vote bank, so that people would vote for them. And I'm sure, knowing Mr. Modi and BJP's policies, they would be preparing for a false flag operation as well, so that they can justify all these heavy budget spendings. And to my surprise, when I was reading few articles by Indian scholars, they were even unhappy with this allocation. They thought that Indian military modernization and defense policies, they need allocation of more budget. More budget should be allocated for them. So this also shows or reflect upon their priorities in the region, or priorities for India, economic build up and helping people to deal with the poverty issues is not their priority, but their priority is to build themselves as a military might, as a might which can bully and harass the other regional countries, and present itself as a potential threat to China, to the powers who want India to be there, to act like a competitor and a balancing factor vis-a-vis China. But here it is very important.
Dr. Asma, you have elaborately explained what are basically the aims of this particular huge defense spending. When we talk about the implications for Pakistan in particular, so what happened to be those implications for Pakistan, and what challenges lie ahead when Pakistan has to deal with such a threat?
See, if we know that Pakistan's defense policy that that doesn't depend upon creating a balance in conventional military forces, because definitely we are not as warmonger like India, so that we consume all our resources in only following the Indian footsteps when it comes to arms race. But definitely Pakistan's defense policy relies on credible minimum deterrence. So definitely, if anything or any action of India would affect the deterrence equation, the strategic stability in South Asia, Pakistan would definitely respond, because sovereignty is our or ensuring our sovereignty is our number one, or any country is number one priority. And this reminds me as well that India recently, we all know that how they are playing with the Indus Water Treaty, and they want changes in the treaty, which is definitely not called for. But definitely after showing these postures, because the helicopter factory or the aircraft building their indigenous aircraft, all these things happened in 2022, and this recent their letter written to demand certain changes in IWT was written few weeks back. So definitely after doing that defense posturing, aggressive defense posturing, they maybe they think that Pakistan, because Pakistan right now is struggling or dealing with several issues, Pakistan may compromise on its basic national interest. But these Indian policymakers should realize that no country on earth would ever compromise on its sovereignty and security at any cost. And Pakistan has several times assured or reasserted the fact that water is our red line, and that is the line we would not cross.
So,
We would
Dr.
not
Asma,
allow
coming back
anyone.
to the very point when you already mentioned that Pakistan can't actually race and take part in that arms race when it comes to the conventional weapons, and the very policy Pakistan maintains is credible minimum deterrence on that front. Now, when there is such a huge spending going on from such a the perpetual threat that has been doing misadventures against Pakistan in the recent past also. So what areas Pakistan should actually focus on in order to meet that threat if in the future any sort of a misadventure that happens, keeping aside that credible minimum deterrence for a moment?
Definitely preparedness. And then India is always an aggressive power, which unfortunately our neighbor. So Pakistan always deterred India conventionally and non-conventionally from raising any conflict into a full-scale war, or converting a conflict into a full-scale confrontation. Whether it was 2019 Balakot, or it was 2002 eyeball to eyeball standoff, or it was any other as such post nuclear era, any such event in this case. Pakistani Air Force, we all know that how when it comes to training and tactical superiority, Pakistan, with its own minimum resources and defense assets, Pakistan tried its best to not allow India to violate or to violate Pakistan's sovereignty and independence. So definitely Pakistan have proved that whatever India does, and doesn't matter how much weapons India buy, the tactical superiority, the superiority of training is unmatchable. So definitely, if India is thinking that by all those aggressive defense spending, India can bully Pakistan, or India can push Pakistan, but then definitely they are thinking wrong. But I'm sure they are not that. They would not be thinking on those lines. They only want to influence their forthcoming vote bank in India. And definitely, I'm sure Pakistan's policymakers, they are well aware of all those acts, and that is why, we did in the recent history, we didn't allow India to escalate any conflict to a point where, and I always say, when it comes to India under Modi, I can see that international community rely on the rationality of Pakistan's decision maker to de-escalate a situation. De-escalation, it is the de-escalation ladder that is always been successfully implemented only because of the cooperation and maturity of Pakistan's policymakers. Otherwise, we all know that in India, Indian defense policy, Indian nuclear policy, Indian nuclear push button, that is in the hands of Hindu radicals, and in the hands of a party which always advocate military jingoism, military superiority, the threats to use nuclear weapons against their neighbors, and that is the manifestation of Indian strategic culture, because peace is equal to cowardness. Peace deals, peace agreements, living in peace with neighbors is an act of cowardness as per Indian strategic culture. So, only to highlight it, only to manifest it, they use the terms like the Indian nuclear weapons are not for Diwali or for the festival, but definitely I'm sure.
Right.
Pakistan, with the help of proactive diplomacy, international institutions, and the third parties involved in that region, in this region, South Asia, would definitely deter India from taking any misadventure against any country. And then we should not forget the importance of China. And we should not forget that China is so much technologically, militarily, in terms of defense tactics and strategy, is much more advanced, developed than India. So whatever India is thinking, or whatever India is trying to prove by increasing its defense budget, that is not the case. And if you remember, I think 2 years back,
Dr. Asma, will come to this particular dimension that is associated with China. Now, there is another development. India has unveiled the largest helicopter factory. At the inauguration of it, its Prime Minister said that our government's pledge to gradually reduce India's dependence on foreign countries for its defense needs. Now, going towards the self-reliance as far as defense is concerned, is it because of that lack of trust, the kind of arsenal or the weaponry or the jets it had been getting from its supporters or the major powers were not sufficient to make any sort of a misadventure, as we saw in the form of the Balakot strike? That's why it is heading towards the self-reliance?
I think the policy of self-reliance is to get into the international defense procurement market, and to build their own military industrial complexes, and to compete with the West and the USA when it comes to military industrial developments. And I'm not sure that how India can rely on their own weapons vis-a-vis Pakistan, when Pakistan has much sophisticated, advanced air force and weapons, and still time would tell that how efficient those indigenously developed aircrafts or helicopters would be. So right now it is without knowing the specifications and the potential of those indigenously developed armaments in India, it is very difficult to comment on their efficiency and their performance. But definitely, and then I would like to add that India is working on smart technologies. India is working on technological development of their military. India is working on indigenous arms build-up programs. So Indian defense and then the military modernization. So Indian and defense policy is bit right now is forming. I would say all these, we have to see when all those things have been achieved, then how Indian defense capabilities and preparedness would look like. Right now, whatever these developments are happening, they are reminding me of the Indian Cold Star doctrine, because when India adopted Cold Star doctrine it also had these claims that we would do this, and this would increase that much efficiency, and it will give us mobility and swift and efficient logistical support. But when time came and when India tried to test this cold start doctrine on ground, it failed miserably, and that is why now India
Right,
is
right.
is going for. And
Right.
another
Dr.
thing
Asma, let me proceed with the discussion. We are honored to have been joined by another participant in the studio by Mr. Brigadier Retired Shahid Jagir. He's Senior Analyst. Brigadier Jagir, thank you very much for taking time
Very
out for
kind
views
of
on
you.
news. Tonight, really appreciate that a huge defense spending has been laid out in the for the financial year 2023 and 24 by India. Why is that so? 13% increase from the previous period's initial estimates.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. As you were already discussing, Indian dream of hegemonic dream of South Asia are materializing now, followed by the Hinduvata policy and the Hinduvata ideology, I would say. This is also backed by the China containment policy, Quad policy, which the Western world is backing up India to contain China from its due specific role in the world order of tomorrow. So, but this will be very, very detrimental to the South Asian peace. Keeping in view the Indian BJP government and the Hindutva ideology in mind, it will destabilize South Asia. It will have an effect not only on China and Pakistan, it will have effect on Afghanistan, it will have effect on the smaller countries like Nepal, like Bhutan, like the other countries which are so smaller and bordering the bordering India. So they are going to be more suppressed because of this rise in the defense budget, more weapons coming in the area with India. Moreover, it will start an arms race in the South Asia, which is very dangerous.
How challenging it would be for Pakistan? I'll come to that particular point for you to shed a little bit more light on this particular point. We're joined by another participant on the phone line by Dr. Rizwana Abbasi, Head of Department International Relations, NUML University. Thank you very much for joining in tonight at Views on News. Dr. Rizwana, so why do we see this budget increase for the defense sector in India? We've seen over the last couple of years there had been a 9% increase on yearly basis. This time it's 13%, making India the third largest defense spender in the world. What reasons do you associate with that?
Thank you so much for having me on the show. First of all, I would say that, of course, we all know that India holds, its rising global stature in the present environment and in the contemporary era. You know that India holds a presidency of the G20 countries currently. It also enjoys global mainstreaming under the Nuclear Suppliers Group waiver and the status of NPT state, while, of course, we all know not being a member to that treaty. So currently, we have also observed that the U.S. strategic consideration of India as a net security provider in the broader Asia-Pacific region, and in parallel, India's quest for its power maximization in the region has become more evident than ever before. So more so, I would like to argue that India has integrated its economy globally, and today it has become world's fifth largest economy. So in this backdrop, India can afford increased military budget, right? So more so, I would say that on security side, India is also preparing itself to fight two-front war with China and Pakistan. So it goes without saying that India is bolstering its defense in air, land, sea, and cyberspace domain. So not only India is modernizing its technologies, there are some alarming, developments taking place that directly impact Pakistan's security. So, for example, if we see that India is moving away from no first use to first use counter force disarming strikes, India is also, trying to challenge existing status quo through its compellence means. And I cannot overlook the fact that India is currently busy in operationalizing its cold store doctrine. How? I would like to argue that India has inducted two supplementary doctrines. For example, Joint Doctrine of Indian Armed Forces 2017 and Land Warfare Doctrine 2018 with an aim to increase the integration of the Indian Armed Forces to conduct high-tech, I would say, proactive operations in synergized manner. So I am really afraid that India currently is working on acquiring disruptive technologies, for example, is busy in order to militarize artificial intelligence. So, this would directly lead to impact Pakistan's national security. So today, India is not only busy in that front, but also, acquiring high-tech, expensive technologies, for example, fielding, sea-based ballistic missile submarine fleet, and it is testing intercontinental, ballistic missiles, continue to build up, its MIRV technologies, BMD systems, cruise missiles, so on and so forth. So currently, we have also seen that India has inducted its, highly expensive, aircraft, commissioned its highly expensive aircraft carriers. So those who argue that Pakistan is facing decreased, threat from India probably live in illusion.
So Dr. Rizwana, when we specifically talk about the challenges after this continuous increase in the defense spending, what are the challenges Pakistan could face in the future because of this, and what sort of an impact it would have on the regional security environment?
I think deepening impact. First of all, I would like to say that it leads to create regional imbalance. Of course, my earlier speaker, I was just observing. He said that yes, it will lead to create arm racing problem. It would alarmingly lead to create nuclear accidental risks. It will increase likelihood of war, not decrease the probability of war. So I would say that inclusion of particularly AI in weapons system will lead to introduce autonomy in the battlefield, which in turn will lead to erode the foundation of deterrence. This will, in my view, lead to increase high risks of crisis stability and deterrence stability. So this will not achieve peace, rather than, in my view, it would lead to make peace exploited and, add not into state securities, but states deepening insecurities in the future.
So, Dr. Rizwana, is there any mechanism or way to control this inclusion of the modern technologies into India's arsenal?
I think Pakistan cannot regulate Indian defense budget, its modernization of technologies, since it has clubbed itself to the global technology, leaders and holders. So what we can do is that we need to convince India to hold a constructive dialogue on range of issues. What are those issues? For example, we can, open up and ask them to open up CBMs to reduce nuclear risks. We can, move forward, convincing India to open up all the military to military and political to political hotlines. And of course, we can, start discussion on preventing the possibility of militarization of artificial intelligence in South Asia. So more significantly, I think that those, again, I would like to argue that those who think that accommodation policy with India will lead to evade threats, thereby making Pakistan secure, certainly I would argue again live in illusion. So I would like to say that on policy of accommodation, I think what we can do is that we can possibly go for only revival of the Lahore Declaration that would build trust between the two states. And this kind of trust can help us to, create sort of platform in order to create more discussion that will help us to somehow not totally ban, but also regulate sort of technologies that can, preserve peace and avoid any risks of likelihood of war.
Dr. Rizwana Abbasi, Head of Department of International Relations, National University of Modern Languages, joining us on the phone line. Thank you very much for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate your time. Brigadier Jagir, challenges for Pakistan after this continuous spending on the defense sector in India.
Look, first of all, the challenge which we have is that we have 4 types of borders with India. We have international border, then we have working boundary with the, then we have line of control, then we have actual line of contact. So, the rise of the defense budget will have a very serious implications for Pakistan. Second is that we are economically at the moment in turmoil. We first must address this thing, that this rise in the budget, acquiring of the technology, whether naval, air or land by India and enhancing it, would not only have implication for Pakistan, it will have implication for South Asia as well as implication for the trade which is going on in the Arabian Sea, right from the Suez Canal till Malacca Strait, which is India wants to dominate this area. So, in the backdrop of again, but I earlier said to you, the Quad, China containment and other agreement which the India has gone in, and now it is a time that G8 meeting is also going to be held in India. The world must look at this, that where to end, where to stop India from bullying its neighbors.
Who is going to do that? The major world powers?
I do not think so at the moment, because the environment is not that. Environment is which is helping the India for backing off the West. So, Pakistan has to, and Alhamdulillah, I would say Pakistan Armed Forces in Pakistan, despite all the challenges, economic challenges we have been facing in the last 20 years, we have always have a response of Indian threat perception against Pakistan. And I must let me say this thing, we have something in the cuff also, which is not visible. But India can't dare to look at us. I would say that we should raise our voice with the world community, especially the UN, because it will also have a very adverse effect on the Kashmir, because the more Indian has
Brigadier Jagir,
weapons.
beg your pardon for the interjection. Pakistani authorities have been repeatedly raising their voice at the international fora. Now, when we talk about the United Nations, Pakistan's permanent envoy, Mr. Munir Akram, also raised his voice quite a couple of times over there at that forum regarding India's nefarious designs and the kind of acquisition of weapons it has been having now most recently. But when we talk about the international community's responsibility, particularly of the major powers, you have already mentioned, all the participants have mentioned that it is because of the backing of the Western powers. We clearly see, despite all the concerns which have been raised by the immediate neighbors, the US continues to support India. There is an initiative that has been unveiled most recently, a potential joint production of General Electric Corporation jet engines to India with the help of the US, and President Biden has given a go ahead to that one as well. That particular initiative is the US-India initiative on critical and emerging technologies aimed at building the military strength of India, transferring the technology, and also having the supply chain links. So, I mean, what is the solution? Where to look forward to? I mean, the United Nations, the major world powers, even the France had an agreement to upgrade the submarines of India. So, what to do in that sort of a situation?
No, this is what the fact on the ground is, what you have talked about. Unfortunately, the interest of the corporate big corporate companies, whether defense or IT or commercial, they are the one which actually the power mafia which rule the Western governments, you know. So we at the moment, not only we have to look at this thing at the two front. One is that we have to tell our allies that this is what India is doing. You need to stop it. If you want our backing on the geopolitical standings, you have to look at it. One. Second, we have to raise our voice in the United Nations. You need the weapons and equipment. Why? What is the reason for that? Third, what is the threat perception that you are looking at to enhance your defense budget? What is the poverty rate in India at the moment? People are living in the slums in Bombay and Madras and big cities, you count any. But nobody is taking care of that. Where are the human rights? Are they the one who needs to be taken care of? Are the guns which needs to be purchased? Unfortunately, in the world, the weapon complex and the military complex of the Western world which are supplying the weapons, they are not concerned with the humanity. They are concerned with making the money. So we have to, on the one side, we have to make an effort to convince the West and the UN that what India is doing in the defense
domain, right? Because Jagir, when we talk about the regional countries, I mean, India has strained and tense relations with almost all its neighbors. So could there be any kind of collective effort from all the regional countries in order to impress upon the major world powers that it is going to destabilize the region and it's going to have
I was coming to that. Now, SCO is one forum in which South Asian countries sit together and discuss the problems of the South Asia. That is the forum in which this issue must be raised. Second is that it should be raised by all the affected countries of the South Asia which are bordering India in the United Nations. They are the one. Pakistan has to get in touch with these countries, tell them the reality of the ground, and they all should collectively on the forum of SCO, on the forum of UN, they are the one who all can put forward a resolution jointly to talk about India, because it is getting out of hand now. On one side, as I always used to say, the Hindutva ideology, RSS arming and political support is going to destabilize South Asia. Right. On the other hand, this rise in the budget should not be taken lightly, and at every forum we need to raise the voice.
Right. Dr. Asma, your take regarding this, how the regional countries, particularly the immediate neighbors of India, could do a collective effort in order to make the international community, especially the major powers, to realize that the kind of support they are giving to India is going to disturb the balance of power in the region, and it's going to have an adverse impact on the people of all the countries of concern.
Definitely, regional countries can use proactive diplomacy to register their concerns and register the threat they perceive from Indian military build-up and Indian defense policies. So international forums, different international forums can be used for that, and we have to see that that if all the regional countries are ready, because SARC was one of an important platform which could be used by the regional countries to highlight their grievances regarding India's defense policy. But we all know that India, being the largest country in the region, has also almost made the SARC ineffective. And here I would like to mention that my last book on confidence building measures, Shaking Hands with Clenched Fists, the Grand Trunk Road to Confidence Building Measures between India and Pakistan, also highlighted that we need to work on the nuclear risk reduction and threat reduction in the region, and that can only be achieved through different confidence building measures. However, it is pertinent to mention here that when the incidental fire of BrahMos missile in last year in March, that Pakistan and India had a CBM, they had an agreement, they still have that agreement, that in case any country would launch a missile, they would inform in advance to the concerned country, and even in case if it is accidental. But we all know that India failed to follow this agreement, and India did not inform Pakistan, even if we take the Indian stance that it was an accidental fire.
So is there any mechanism, Doctor, is there any mechanism on the international level, especially when it comes to the UN, to deal with such a laxity or a transgression, if you call it so?
Yes, exactly. Because when India and Pakistan are working on nuclear risk reduction in South Asia, if India and Pakistan, because here it is pertinent to mention that agreements and CBMs, they are always successful if we do it from the position of power. So if both countries have this certain equity and equality when it comes to military balancing, otherwise the chances are less that such CBMs would be successful. But definitely keeping in mind the security dilemma in South Asia, the hostile nature of bilateral relationship between Pakistan and India, and the trust deficit hijacked the development and economic development in this region. Definitely Pakistan and India, with the guarantee of a third party, need to work on effective, efficient and continuous confidence building measures. But definitely we all know that Indus Water Treaty is still effective and functional till to date only because World Bank is a guarantor in that treaty, and the both countries, this treaty has inbuilt mechanism where and provide forums where both countries can access in case of any problem or any grievances regarding the implementation of this treaty. So in India-Pakistan CBMs, especially in the field of military sphere or the security sphere, it is really important that India and Pakistan should have an inbuilt mechanism. Here I always mention that all other important regions of the world, they have these crisis management centers, crisis risk reduction centers, which work on the whole region. South Asia is the world's most least connected region when it comes to combined efforts to deal with common threats. Like we all know that when the COVID-19 was affecting the culture of whole world and the security, whether it was health security and economic security of whole world, regions collectively tried or designed policies to deal with it. But if we see India's policies and its defense policies especially, and all this military buildup which is doing without calculating, understanding or giving any heed to the concerns of neighboring countries, it shows that India is in no mood to work in the region as an equal power. India is
right. Brigadier Jagir, your point is well taken, Dr. Asma. I'll have to proceed to Mr. Jagir. Now, when we talk about China in specific, it happens to be the permanent member of the UN Security Council. When it comes to the responsibility of the UN Security Council, how can China use that platform and its position of being the permanent member of the Security Council to make India at least follow those international norms and laws which have been designed for this particular domain?
Look, I would say the narrative which the Chinese can build on when there is an imbalance in the conventional forces of the two countries, nuclear armed countries, is the balance is tilted toward one, the chances of a nuclear exchange probability, though it gets upper in the ladder. So, this is the thing which the world needs to understand. That is why I say one should the countries which are affected in the South Asia because of this rise of the defense budget of the Indians must all get together, all those who are bordering India, China, smaller countries, Pakistan, and the others which are going to be affected if in case of a conventional war leading to a nuclear exchange, who all are going to get affected. It's going to be the Middle East, it's going to be the Japan, it's going to be Taiwan.
Brigadier Shah Jagir, I have to cut you over here. Unfortunately, we are short of time. Brigadier Shah Jagir, Senior Analyst, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. And Dr. Asma Shakir Khawaja, Executive Director, Center for International Strategic Studies, AJK, joining us on Skype. Thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. Also, now, after the entire discussion, we can conclude there's such a huge spending in the defense sector by the Indians shouldn't be taken lightly by the international community, and especially the major world powers, including the US and France, who are supporting India to get build up its military strength on modern lines and more advanced lines, because it is going to seriously have serious repercussions in the region, and it's going to seriously disturb the balance of power in the region as well. And to avoid any catastrophe in the region, the international community must take an action and impress upon India to curtail its defense overtures. With that note, we come to the end of today's show. Until the next one, take good care.